All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tori Santucci, and I am the project coordinator for the energy efficiency programs here at the Municipal Climate Change Action Center. And I'd like to welcome you all to bringing new life into old arenas with energy efficiency for today's webinar. Joining me today, we have my colleague, Calvin Leckelt. He's the program lead for energy efficiency, and he's going to be kind of behind the scenes monitoring the Q&A box as we go along and getting some questions ready for us behind the scenes. We also have several guest speakers here with us today who have graciously offered their time to discuss their energy efficiency projects that were involved in some of their municipal arenas. So I'll introduce them when we get to the guest panel discussion of this webinar. As participants continue to join, I'll just review some housekeeping items. So we are using Microsoft Teams, the live application, so all cameras and microphones are turned off. If you do have any questions at any point in time during the presentation, feel free to type them into the Q&A box at the top of your screen as we go along. We'll be reserving some time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions that you do have. This webinar will be recorded and it will be made available to participants once it's uploaded. So first, a land acknowledgement. This presentation is being presented from Treaty 6 territory, and we would like to acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries and whose presence continue to enrich our vibrant communities today. So here's the agenda. We'll start off just by talking a little bit about the Action Center. If you haven't heard of us, this will be good information. And then we'll dive into the heart of the webinar, why you'd want to retrofit your arenas. And we'll talk about some of the funding and the supports that are available. And then we'll get into hearing from some of our guest speakers that are here with us today, followed by some questions and answers at the end and in between presentations as well. So if you haven't heard of us, we're the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, and we were founded back in 2009 as a collaborative initiative between the Albertan Urban Municipalities Association, the Rural Municipalities of Alberta, and the Government of Alberta. We also deliver funding, technical assistance, and education to help Albertan municipalities, school authorities, and community-related organizations to address climate change. Among our peers, we've been recognized as an environmental leader in the province, being the recipient of the 29th Annual Emerald Award. We've established ourselves as a trusted implementer and project manager in the province of Alberta, and we've got a great reputation of encouraging healthy collaborations through our program delivery work, and we strive to provide excellent customer service along the way. So after 10 years of being in the market, the impact of our programs is quite significant. You can see some great results on the screen now. Over a third of municipal governments in Alberta have created real savings and real change in their operations by participating in our programs and services. Whether you're a city, town, or village, there really is no community that's too big or too small to participate. And we provide support every step of the way to help municipalities achieve their goals. So getting into it, why would you want to retrofit your arena? Well, arenas are the heart of Alberta communities, both large and small. Everything from hockey tournaments to curling bonspiels, trade shows, concerts. They're an important unifying factor in municipalities all across the province. However, they are also among the highest energy consuming facilities in a municipality. An arena's day-to-day operations can typically be very expensive. You can ask any building operator and they'll tell you the same thing. It's very expensive to maintain, and as a result, they emit significant amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. Thankfully, there are many steps that you can take to boost an arena's energy efficiency, which will reduce the costs of operations. So where do you begin? Well, we recommend starting with a scoping audit or an engineering study. These type of reports provide customized information, so it'll give you things like a description of the building's energy usage, analyses of project feasibility, consumption data for energy efficiency measures. All of these can benefit your facility. By completing an audit or a study, building operators then have the information that they need to prioritize effective opportunities to reduce energy costs and emissions in your arena. Which one do you need? Well, a scoping audit is an audit that's recommended when an arena operator is contemplating retrofits and they require assistance identifying which measures will yield the greatest energy and cost savings. That's a little bit different from an engineering study. These types of studies are more comprehensive investment grade reports. So we would recommend that when you know what you want to retrofit. It could be very high, could have very high capital costs. So you want to analyze the feasibility of it, the large scale energy efficiency project. So that's the difference. Now you're ready to begin. So start with the easy wins, or that low-hanging fruit, which are your low and no cost opportunities at the facility. So energy efficiency gains can be achieved through simple alterations to your arena's operating portfolio. So some low-hanging fruit could be adjustments in building operation, adjusting for changes to occupant behavior, and modifications to the building schedule. There's many things you can do. So consult your contractor to discover what opportunities will yield the best bang for your buck. And there's lots of benefits. By implementing larger energy efficient retrofits, you will save big on energy costs, reduce your facility energy use, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions as well. And in turn, you'll shape healthier, more energy efficient lives in your community. We'll talk a little bit about the funding program that we do have in place. That's the Recreation Energy Conservation Program. So this is a funding program for municipally owned recreation facilities, municipally owned being the keyword there, in the province of Alberta with high energy consuming systems. All Albertan municipalities are eligible to participate, as well as nonprofit organizations that run municipally owned recreation centers, although the municipality will have to apply on their behalf. Eligible facilities include arenas, curling rinks, pools, dry sports centers, really any recreation facility. Ineligible facilities include new facility additions that were recently built, public gathering spaces, things like community halls, nonprofit, private-based organizations who own their facility, ag societies. There's many different types here that we could get into, but some may be eligible or not, depending on a case-by-case basis. So if you're not sure whether your facility would qualify, feel free to submit an expression of interest on our website, and we can evaluate them as they come in. So the REC program is intended to provide and identify energy efficient opportunities that will in turn provide financial rebates to energy efficiency projects. So there's many different things that could qualify. So the three main initiatives that we fund are scoping audits, engineering studies, and implementation projects. So engineering studies and scoping audits, we fund up to 100% of costs and up to the maximums that you kind of see on the screen here. So 8,000, 10,000, and 12,000 for scoping audits and 20,000 for engineering studies. And once you've completed those, you can move on to implementation. We fund up to 75% of project costs up to a 1-year payback. So whichever kind of comes first. And they do have to be at least $10,000 in costs. And in order to get past that threshold, you can kind of bundle measures together to get there. So altogether, municipalities can receive a maximum of $750,000 in REC funding for all three initiatives. A municipality can also apply for simplified measures. These are energy efficiency projects that you don't need a scoping audit or an engineering study to complete, just because they have predictable energy savings achieved by these types of energy conservation measures. So things like lighting, pump replacements, smart thermostats, the whole list is there on the screen, and we've also got a list on our website too. So if you're looking to apply for some of those, take a look at that list and for more information. So with that, we're now going to hear from our guest panel today as they discuss their energy projects and efforts to improve energy efficiency in their municipal arenas. So first up, we've got the climate change coordinator for both the village of Donnelly and the town of Falher. Please welcome Emily Plihal. She is the energy and environmental services manager of the city of Grande, Prairie, Michelle Gairdner. And we also have the facility manager of Genesis Place representing the city of Airdrie. Please welcome Brad Anderson. So in this section, we're going to learn a few things. We're going to see how and why certain projects were targeted and how they were carried out. We're going to learn a little bit about what went well and maybe if there was any issues that were dealt with along the way and what some of the expected energy and cost savings were that were achieved. So first up, we've got Emily Plihal to tell us about some of her projects. So with that, I will turn it over to Emily. Please take it away, Emily.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know where Donnelly and Falher are, we're located roughly 45 kilometers south of Peace River, and the entire region of Smoky River only has 4,500 people. So before I talk a little bit more about our retrofits, I want to plug the Municipal Energy Manager program to everyone that's listening, especially those of you in a smaller municipality. That program is very similar to the program that's funding my position, and it gives you a lot of opportunities to look at different ways to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions and setting reduction targets and such throughout your municipalities. So you can go to the second slide, Tori, if you don't mind. So the top picture is the Guy-Donnelly Sportex, and as you can see, it was built in 1978. So it requires a lot of retrofits and upgrades, and we are slowly working on those. And the bottom picture is the Falher Regional Recreation Complex. The oldest portion is the brown section of it that was built in 1986. And the silver portions of it, the arena is right next to the brown portion, and the curling rink is the longer portion that you see at the back of that picture. You can go ahead, Tori. So we chose our projects. We were approached by a company shortly after I commenced my position with municipalities, and they suggested that we do a scoping audit, which they helped us complete. And it gave a total breakdown of all the things that could be done throughout the facilities to make them more efficient. Based on economics, we chose to, with this first picture you'll see, we put de-aerator retrofits in both Guy-Donnelly Sportex and the Falher Regional Recreational Complex. They are expected to reduce, as you can see by that picture, our energy use significantly over the course of this year. And the payback period is quite quick as well. Essentially, if you're not familiar with the de-aerator, it allows the recreational complexes to make the ice surface out of cold water as opposed to hot. So not only are you reducing your energy costs to make the ice, but also keeping it cool. As you can see, the Donnelly Sportex, we're looking at 43,000 kilowatt hours roughly of electricity savings, and Falher's will be 49,284 kilowatt hours just from the first year. Okay, we can flip ahead. So the Guy-Donnelly Sportex, we managed to do a total lighting retrofit thanks to the program. Essentially, every single light fixture has been changed throughout the facility, with the exclusion of the upstairs gymnastics area, which the electrician forgot to include in his quote. But if you see, you can see the ice surface difference even from left to right. On the left side, that's the old lighting and the ice prior to having the de-aerator in. And the right picture has the new lighting as well as that ice surface with the new de-aerator system. So from what I've heard so far from people, it's actually making the ice surface smoother and it's nicer to skate on. So in terms of our process, I'm not sure that it was 100% normal. The company that was initially going to help us through the process ended up not necessarily completing the scoping audit to full requirements, and they were unable to help us through the final portion of our project. So luckily, I was able to help the municipalities complete the process. Both the lighting and the de-aerator can be completed without doing a scoping audit. So you can actually just submit your application directly to MCCAC to complete those things. I would say the biggest concern for me during the process was doing the lighting calculator, and the folks at Clear Result are super helpful. So if you have minimal staff available to complete this process, and you're unsure if you're going to be able to complete it without a little additional help, the folks at Clear Result help you with any questions that you might have. And if there's anything missing from your application process, they will help you as well. The application process is very simple too. If you follow the guidelines that are set out by MCCAC, everything is really clear. So even if you have a small staff, which a number of small Alberta municipalities do have, you're able to complete it without very little guidance. So I guess essentially, regardless of the size of your municipality, these MCCAC programs provide funding for everybody. It doesn't matter if your project is super small or super large. Apply for the funding, they're really helpful. And as you can see, this, especially in the case of the Guy-Donnelly Sportex, essentially they've been totally overhauled, and now they're going to be saving a substantial amount of cash every year for operating costs. And I apologize. I guess that's pretty much everything for my presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. We'll now just take a quick break from moving on just to get any questions that may have come in. Calvin, are there any questions for Emily?
No questions yet. Feel free to submit them as we move on here, and just be sure to let us know who your question is directed to, and if there are any other questions for Emily as we proceed through the webinar, we can just address those at the end.
Sounds good. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Michelle Gairdner to talk about her project. Take it away, Michelle.
Thanks, Tori. So I am Michelle Gairdner. I manage the Energy and Environmental Services Department, as Tori said, at the City of Grande Prairie. The City of Grande Prairie is about 69,000 people-ish, and we're about 450 kilometers northwest, mostly west of Edmonton. So ours is not an old arena. It's actually, I checked before this morning to make sure of the dates, and this facility opened in December of 2011. So it's a retrofit though. So if you could go to the next slide then, please, Tori. So this facility is called EastLink. This is the EastLink Center, and it has, it's about 30,000 square feet, or no, sorry, 27,000 square feet, and it has a water slide, surf machine, a 50-meter pool and a 25-meter pool, a steam room, a fitness room, a field house, squash courts. So it's quite a large facility. It sits on what's called the Community Knowledge Campus, or the CKC campus, and that campus is home to 2 high schools, a gymnastics facility, a twin ice surface, and a football field. So it's quite a large campus. Inside the EastLink Center, if you go to the next slide, so the next slide just gives you a sense of the layout. Here we have the 3 floors, as you know, so you can see how the facility is laid out. Then if you could go to the next slide, we are installing a combined heat and power unit at this. So we're not completed construction. We've had a bunch of challenges, but we'll talk about those. So this combined heat and power unit is going to save us, oh, yes, okay. So it's going to save us about $370,000 a year. So when I submitted the slide, I realized, and this is where you come into change, we changed the application halfway through. So the data I grabbed was actually from this first submission and then the second submission. So we're actually going to be saving about 1,000 tons of CO2 equivalent The cost of the project is about $2.3 million, and our annual savings is going to be about $370,000. And yeah, so if we could go to the next slide. So the program that we access, we actually started out with a custom energy solution, and then we transitioned into the REC program when it became available. The benefits of the REC program is there was more money, and we had the same program ally throughout. So interesting is that on this facility, we'd been approached by ATCO in 2014 to consider putting a CHP unit at this facility, and our corporate leadership team at the time decided that they didn't want to pursue it. So then we got a new city manager a few years ago, and he decided, he leaned over his first couple of days and he said, hey, we need to talk. And when we started talking, he said, have you ever thought about a CHP? So we were a little bit ahead so that I could show him what we'd started to do. And so, but we just continued with ATCO throughout. So the next slide. So why CHP and why now? So if you're not familiar, combined heat and power uses natural gas, and it produces electricity for the facility. So the exhaust heat is produced and then is captured by a heat exchanger and then used to feed warm water into the boiler, increasing the efficiency of the boiler. And then the remaining exhaust is cleansed and released to the atmosphere. We will be using a significant portion of the, let me just sorry, I've got all these different screens open. So we think that we will be able to utilize 81% of the heat over the year, and that use 99% of the electricity that's generated at that facility. So if you could go to the next slide. So like I said, our program ally, so with the REC program and with the CES program, you had to have a program ally that was vetted by MCCAC. This is a smooth, very slick process. It's awesome. ATCO did everything for us, like everything for us. They did the initial study. They submitted the grant for us. They are creating the final design. They are now our general contractor, so they put the tender out for the equipment. We didn't have to have any of that in-house. We just utilized the program ally that had already been vetted, and they're aware of all of the requirements for the REC program. So they helped make sure that we're not missing something, because sometimes it's hard to juggle. We go to the next slide, please. Lessons learned. Oh man, we haven't even started construction. And I have a ton of lessons. So first one, when we first submitted this, and this is where I went back to that slide, we had 2 submissions. We changed the submission. So we originally submitted for reciprocating engines for that CHP, and then I went away on holidays. So first lesson learned, don't go away on holidays when you're in the midst of a project. The city manager, and it was a great idea, said, why don't we go with twin turbines? So we resubmitted, and it cost more, but we'll have more savings. So we moved from about $350,000 a year in savings to about $370,000. So that was a great one. Have contingency, always have contingency. We had determined a location, and we had it all done, and just at the very end, well, actually when we were getting the mechanical and electrical subcontractors to provide their quotes on what it would cost, the project came in a couple $100,000 over what was forecasted, and that was all of our contingency money, and we hadn't even awarded the contract yet. So we ended up having to move the units, and it's going to be much closer to the mechanical room where they need to be. However, it's on the north side of the facility, which means that they're about 50 yards from residential, the edge of a residential property. So in our contingency, we are preparing for options on should we have to do noise attenuation for those residents. We have a bunch of different sort of layers that we'll add a layer at a time. We did add to the units a noise attenuation, which brings the decibel levels down from about 70 to about 58. So it shouldn't make that much difference, but we just want to be prepared just in case. The other big thing I learned on this, and this is the first time I've done a project that's this large, invite more people to the table from your organization than you think you need. They can always back out, but it's easier to have them from the start than to try and grab them from the beginning. And the program ally, I cannot say enough about the benefits of the program as MCCAC has set it up and the program ally, because it just is so much easier to continue that continuation from the time you start the study to completion is a lot easier. And other than that, let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Some great lessons there for sure. We'll now pause to see if there's any questions come in. Calvin, do you see any for either Michelle or Emily, or any questions from anyone?
Yeah, we just had one come in for Michelle. This person asks, what were the reasons why they didn't go ahead? Sorry about that. What were the reasons they didn't go ahead the first time around? So I think that's in reference to the change between the two types of CHP units.
Okay, or it could be the one that when we did it in 2014-15.
That could be that too, yeah.
Okay, so this is hard to tell. So there was a program the province offered at the time, and this actually, we would have got these CHPs for free. We just would have had to pay the maintenance costs. I was new to this. I didn't have a lot of knowledge. And our corporate leadership team and other staff felt that there was too much of a risk because of the maintenance cost, which we have to pay anyway on this unit. So it was an error in judgment. I think it was lack of experience, which is where your program allies come in, or your municipal energy managers programs come in. When you don't have that experience in-house, it's hard to justify a large scale purchase or a large maintenance cost when you're not really understanding it. So I hope that answered the question for you.
Yeah, I think so. If not, that person can feel free to resubmit another question. The next question just comes in. All of them are anonymous, so feel free to put your name there as well. It makes it easier for us to follow up with you if we want to answer your question in a little bit more detail. So the next question is, for the CHP project, do you feel the level of NOx emitted, or sorry, do you know the level of NOx emitted from the CHP unit? Might not be something you have off.
You know what? I do have all the technical here. I don't have it right off the top of my head. Sorry. But I can find it, and if they'll tell us who it is, if they give us their name, I can send them that information. Okay,
that sounds good. The next question is from Jawad. He says, hi, Michelle. Did you conduct a cost-benefit analysis of going with ATCO as a general contractor compared to another solution provider? Was it cheaper or just simpler to choose ATCO?
So because we had started with ATCO in the custom energy solution process, which is a separate process and a different way of doing things, if we had switched in the REC program, the design and all of the stuff that we generated through ATCO would have to be redone. So, and the same thing from the very first one, because when ATCO had come to us 5 years ago, they had a starting point. So it did save us some time because they were very familiar with the facility. And the second piece is that it was just easier. Sometimes, if we'd saved maybe we could save $50,000, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but the staff time is a big, like, we don't always look at what our labor costs are. And from a labor perspective, it was easier to go with ATCO, who already were so familiar with the facility, and because the campus is so complex, because they share so many services, it just, so no, we didn't check other service providers, but again, they have to be, in order to do this, they have to be a program ally. So you can only pick from who MCCAC has in their sort of lineup.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. Next question is about the maintenance costs. I'm really just trying to get a sense as to how large that maintenance cost will be with the unit that you've decided to go forward with.
I think it's $87,000 a year. That's all in. So we pay that, and it's included in our savings. So we included that dollar figure when we figured out how much we would save on our utility costs per year. So the $87,000 gives us 24 hours a day support. It is a local company, so it's called Flex Leasing that's providing these turbines. They have an office here. They also have different units out in the south of Grande Prairie in 7 Gens fields. So we felt it was of value because we don't have to worry about a part. Everything we're covered. They come in, they do the servicing. There's at 7 years, I believe it is, they have to sort of do a total rebuild. So we felt it was the best way to go.
All right, one more question, and we can move on and we can address some of the other questions at the end of the presentation. Edward asks, did ATCO guarantee the performance, for example, the savings? So in reference to energy performance contract of some kind?
No, there's no energy performance contract. We were very conservative and we did have them sort of reviewed in-house lots. In the time we started this program to where we are now, we have an energy analyst on staff that was also able to look through the numbers. Our CFO looked through the numbers. And this is not new technology. Well, it's new to some municipalities. In everything we've talked to in oil and gas, this is something that saves people money all the time. So we'll spend more on natural gas, but because natural gas is so much lower than electricity, we will do that. ATCO Gas gets a lot of money from us every year, or ATCO Energy, sorry. They are the wires provider in Grande Prairie. So I'm confident that we have a pretty strong relationship. I'm hoping that that helps.
Great, thanks a lot. We have a couple more questions coming in, but just in the interest of time, I think we could move back over to Brad, and I can manage some of these questions behind the scenes.
Sounds great, Calvin. Thank you. So last but certainly not least, we'll now be hearing from Brad Anderson. He's the facility manager at Genesis Place, representing the city of Airdrie. Go ahead, Brad.
Thanks. And can you hear me okay still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yeah, so good afternoon. My name is Brad Anderson. I'm the manager of Genesis Place, as well as the arenas in the city of Airdrie. For those of you that haven't been to Airdrie or are familiar with it, Genesis Place is a 350,000 square foot multi-use rec center where we provide to the community a range of programs and services and amenities. including 5 bodies of water, a water slide, 2 indoor field houses, gymnasium, fitness center, running track, multi-purpose rooms, kids play center, preschool, gymnastics center, athletic park with grandstand, and a twin NHL arena. It was originally built in 2004, and we've actually added 2 additional phases, which were completed in 2009 and 2012. So our facility here sees about 1.5 million visits annually, and we actually were the host for the 2020 Alberta Winter Games about 3 weeks before the pandemic hit this year. So we've gone from being super busy back to next to nothing, as I'm sure a lot of you on the call are today too. Next slide, please. So our first MCAC project was the solicitation of an energy audit and scoping report that was completed in 2016 to identify priorities for savings and for capital improvements. Really the focus of this was more on some of our older arenas. The report helped to inform our 10-year capital and life cycle plan and identified projects that could offset approximately $20,000 a year of annual electrical and fuel savings, with the project's total payback period of 6 years. Today I'll cover at a high level how we utilized some of the various MCAC programs over the past 5 years. Next slide, please. So the City of Airdrie has 3 separate arenas that we operate. The Plainsmen was built in 1970s and is a single sheet of ice. The Ebbesen is a twin that was built in the early 90s, and then we have a twin here at Genesis Place that was constructed and commissioned in 2012. So again, the scoping audit was really around some of our retrofitting our older and more of our energy consuming arenas. So the first one was our lighting project at the Ebbesen and the Plainsmen arenas. So the retrofit was 75% grant funded, and the payback period was less than 5 years. Now, obviously, it resulted in a lot lower maintenance time and costs, as well as these lights have a life expectancy of 10 to 15 years. It also gives a modern look to our older arenas with a much brighter, whiter, and cleaner appearance. And we were also able to reduce the fixture count while maintaining the same lux levels in our arenas. Next slide, please. So we also finished a pretty sizable HVAC upgrade and low E ceiling project at the Ebbesen. The energy scoping audit identified some upgrades, improvements, as well as replacing the ceiling above the ice surfaces that could increase our energy efficiency. Infrared radiation from the arena ceiling can account for about 30% of the refrigeration plant's energy consumption. So the new low emissivity ceiling reduced the heat load on the ice surface by about 25% from the ceiling and reduced the compressor and brine pump run times by about 10%. It also helped to brighten the arena, as the ceiling helps to reflect light back onto the ice surfaces. The energy scoping audit also recommended a number of upgrades to our HVAC system, with many components at or near the end of life stage at 25 years. We replaced the boiler system, added in fresh air makeup units, programmable thermostats, exhaust ventilators, and ventilation damper controls. So at the completion of that project, we realized that around 10% of electrical savings per year and 8% of fuel savings. Next slide, please. So through the MCAC's Recreation Energy Conservation Program, we were able to replace our traditional propane powered ice resurfacers to an electrical one. We've pictured here is our Olympia IceBear, which we now have at all of our 3 city arenas. The approximate energy savings is around $7,000 to $10,000 annually, and with 75% grant funded. It also leads to a pretty considerable health and safety improvement, as there's less risk to staff and guests from exposure to propane emissions, and is a simple plug-in charging station rather than propane fueling. And obviously with an electric vehicle, there's less maintenance as well, oil changes and other regular maintenance on the actual ice surfacer itself. So that's been a huge success across all of our ice rinks. Next slide, please. So on the roof of Genesis Place is actually currently Canada's largest municipal rooftop solar project. We passed Leduc for the amount of kilowatt hours that we actually produce over the course of the year. The project was over 75% grant funded. It wasn't all through the MCAC program, which is the Alberta Solar Funding Program, which there was $1 million that was contributed through that. The payback of the city's investment is less than 10 years, and it offsets the majority of our facility's electrical requirements in the summer months, and we actually are able to sell back into the grid in the summer. So we're actually pumping some of that power back into the grid, and our meters turning the opposite direction. Our overall savings is expected to be $80,000 to $100,000 annually. This is our first full year with the solar panels commissioned, and our current year to date, I was just looking this morning on the dashboard, is about $77,000 with another month to go. So yeah, we'll definitely be somewhere in that ballpark. NMAX was the contractor that we entered into construction as well as the maintenance agreement for 15 years. They have guaranteed the harvest, so if we don't make what the original what was quoted on before we started on the project, they will cover the rest of it. As well, they do all maintenance troubleshooting on the roof, so our staff have zero accountability when it comes to this solar investment for at least the next 15 years. Next slide, please. And last, we did an LED lighting project at Genesis Place as well. So again, we secured 75% of the project through MCAC's Recreation Energy Conservation Program. After the success of the other arenas, we wanted to retrofit the lights across our recreation center to decrease energy consumption, maintenance, and increase lighting levels. You can see here a side-by-side picture as we were going through replacing all the lights in our field house. The left is where it's actually been completed, and the other on the right-hand side is where it was still being staged. So you can actually see the difference in color temperature and brightness, and really how it kind of gives a whole new fresh feel to our facility by going with the LED fixtures. So almost all our activity zones at Genesis Place were included in this project, which included our fitness center, running track, main hallways and corridors, gymnasium, pool, studio rooms, arenas, and the outdoor areas around our facility as well. So we expect to realize about $25,000 annually with the payback period of less than 4 years when you actually just consider the city's contribution, and that won't take into account the decreased maintenance cost and that sort of thing on this project as well. So yeah, just at a very high level, some of the different projects that we've accessed through MCAC. So yeah, obviously quite a sizable when you add up the solar and all of the other projects that we've been able to take advantage of the programs. And I'll leave it open for some questions.
Awesome, thanks, Brad. So yeah, we'll now take any questions that have come in, either for Brad or any of our presenters today. Calvin, if you wouldn't mind directing that.
Yeah, sure. So we haven't had any questions for Brad come in quite yet, but we did have a couple other questions come in for Michelle. So Peter asks, do you have a backup for the unit in reference to the CHP project? Do you have a backup for the unit to keep the facility open, or is your facility just down until the unit is fixed?
So that's what's really awesome about this is that's when the city manager, our new city manager, he's an engineer, so he thinks about things with a different perspective. So we're installing two 333 kilowatt generators. So there's that, we should never be down. So that load should always be able to come from the grid. And the reason we went that route was to reduce any ratchets. Or potentially, right, to minimize the risk of ratchets.
Yeah, definitely, and that actually is a great example of your piece of advice that you offered in terms of contingency. Having that second unit definitely helps with that.
And one of the things I should say in the last question about whether we checked on ATCO, I should have said also, we did a couple of reference checks. There's other facilities in the province that have CHP units installed by ATCO. I called those facilities and verified that the projections that had been provided by ATCO were being met, and each one of them told me they had been exceeded. So. Yeah,
awesome. Thanks for clarifying. Also for Michelle, Larry asks, given that the bulk of our power generation in the province comes from coal or natural gas, do you think this is a good initiative to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and save electrical costs for other municipalities to look at in similar facilities?
So this is a tough question. It's a really tough question. So, yes, you know, the coal generation is reducing and significantly, and we have moved to a lot of natural gas generation. When we considered it, we really considered about where we live. So we live on top of the Duvernay field, which is probably the largest natural gas field sort of in the region. And so we felt this isn't just, so we try to do everything from a very balanced approach. We look at it from an environmental, a financial, and a sort of a social perspective. So we need to balance economy with costs. So this is where we felt it really worked for our area. If you don't have an abundance of natural gas, it may or may not be the right solution. For us, it 100% is.
Yeah, thanks for that. Even to expand on that point, we're funding a handful of CHP projects through the REC program, and we can definitely confirm that it is certainly a GHG reducing retrofit as compared to the status quo of just purchasing electricity from the grid and then purchasing natural gas to burn in your facilities.
And the other part of that is like we have solar. We do have what we call our transit solar program, and it just doesn't generate enough for us in the, you know, starting from mid-October right through till end of March. So we could never generate. We would have to cover the whole roof for a pool. So it might for another application, but for a pool who needs constant heat. And I always explain to people that a pool is a mini water treatment plant. Sucks up a lot of energy.
For sure. Thanks, Michelle. Next question is from Anthony, and it's for Brad. Do you know the capacity of the solar rooftop project?
Yeah. I always like to say it sounds like Back to the Future. It's 1.5, just over 1.5 megawatts. So, you know, like I said, in the summer months, our meters will actually spin in the opposite direction because we feed it out into the grid because we're not using that much power at any given time. And when we have no battery storage on site, so it's just going to feed back out. But over the course of the year, it equals out to about 30 to 35% of our annual electricity consumption.
Great, thanks, Brad. We have one more question here, not directed to anyone, so I think we can take it on as MCCAC. The question is, does any of the projects, or do any of the projects qualify for carbon credits, or how were the GHG emissions monetized? So any project that's receiving funding from the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, or just generally any provincially funded program, that entity is not eligible to register or sell those credits. Obviously, they're getting support from the provincial government to install that project. So the environmental attributes that are associated with that project are essentially retired. Thanks for that question. All right, Jawad asks, Brad, can you talk briefly about any heat recovery strategies used at the Genesis Place between the ice plant, heat exhaust, and pools/spaces that require heat? Is a heat recovery system already installed, or was it considered as a part of potential building retrofit projects?
Yeah, sure. No, there is no heat recovery system in place between the ice plant and the pool. I know that has existed in some other, I know some other rec centers that have that in place. Because Genesis Place was built in phases, I think that's one of the key reasons. Our pool mechanical is on one side of the building and kind of almost completely isolated from our other new phases. So there really was no way to tie back into the original pool mechanical system. So I think as a learning, as we go forward, I know Airdrie is exploring another recreation center here. We're working towards one, is having a bit of a more central, if we're going to be building in phases again, it's going to be looking at having a bit more of a centralized, mechanical area, that so as phases grow out, that they can all be kind of centralized in one location. So there is no heat recovery at all between those two amenities.
Great, thanks, Brad. Let's give it a couple minutes here for any last minute questions to come through. I think in the meantime, we can move on to the last couple of slides, and that just will give an opportunity to anyone just writing out a question.
Sounds good, Calvin. So yeah, just to end the webinar for today, we'd just like to discuss some of the other programs and services that the MCCAC does offer. So we do have the Alberta Municipal Solar Program and the Solar for Schools program. Both of these programs directed towards installing solar PV on both municipal facilities and schools as well. Aside from the REC program, we also have the Electric Vehicles for Municipalities program, so funding in place to fund many different types of electric vehicles, everything from passenger to medium heavy duty to low speed, non-road like ice resurfacers. So a lot of different vehicles can fit under that category. So we've got funding for that. And we also have the Municipal Energy Manager program that Emily referred to at in her presentation, and that program is there to for municipalities to hire energy managers to help them with their energy management, and also projects such as these that you heard from today. And lastly, we are taking part in the Partners for Climate Protection program. We're affiliated with that. And we do have the Clean Energy Improvement Program beginning very shortly in the next few months or so. That program's about to launch. So for more information about any of these programs, please do visit the MCCAC if you want to learn more. And with that, I just want to say thank you for listening, and thank you to our presenters today for sharing your energy efficiency stories. I hope the participants got something out of that and learned a thing or two. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And with that, we'll see if there's any other questions that came up. Calvin, did you see any?
Yeah, one more. Colleen is asking if Michelle and the city of Grande Prairie uses heat recovery in any of their facilities.
No, we don't. It's something we're exploring, but we don't at this point.
Great, thanks, Michelle.
Awesome.
I think we're all good for questions.
All right, thanks, Calvin. Well, thank you all for listening again, and hope you have a great day. Take care.